All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So today we're going to be talking about the Great Depression. All right. Last time, in the last lesson, we talked about how uh, Germany was going through an economic crisis, and France wanted their money, and the United States said, "Well, we have a plan." And basically, things were going well up until 1929, and that's where this part comes in. Okay. So here is your warm up picture. Now, the question is asking you, what is this artist trying to say about the taxpayers, which is that little skinny guy you see there. And if you look near his thigh muscle, where you can see a little tag and it says taxpayer on there. So if you notice, the water is right by his head. And if you notice, it says by his neck, billions in deficit, means they owe billions of dollars. Okay. And the question is asking, what is this artist trying to say about the taxpayers, that guy, and the wave. And the wave, if you notice, uh, where the latest leg is, it says billions of debt. And I'm sure you may already know, but if you don't know, debt is a bad thing. Debt means you owe money. Okay. So, what do you think this artist is trying to say? And if you notice what he's saying, you know, that should help you out too. And again, if you've ever been near the ocean or you at least seen how a wave looks like in the water, you know it doesn't go, it only goes one certain way. You know, it only goes one way. So that should help you out in answering this question. Okay. So pause the video, write your response. Okay. Because we're moving on in three, two, one. Now, a depression. We're talking about the economic depression, not depression like, oh, I feel sad. No. Okay. We're talking about economic depression. It's a period of when there's low economic activity and there's a rise in unemployment. Okay. Economic activity means like nobody's buying anything. Okay. So imagine like stores, right? Nobody's buying anything from a store. And because that, because nobody has money, right? And because people don't have money, you know, people are not buying things. And those companies that make stuff, since they're not getting any money, they have to fire some workers, and that creates more people unemployed and less and even more people who don't have money, you know. So that's what a depression is. Okay. There were two major factors that led to the Great Depression in 1929, and this affected the whole world, mind you. This wasn't just an isolated event. This was the entire world. Basically, the one of the things was the price of farm products fell rapidly due to overproduction. People were making too much. And I gave the example in class. Think of it like Michael Jordan signed one basketball. That's it. That's all he's ever signed. One basketball, and you own it. How much would that be worth? And a lot of people in class were like, oh, it'd be worth a lot, because that's the only thing he signed. And they're right. Okay. When something is limited, the price of it goes really, really high. Now, let's say Michael Jordan signs everything, you know, every single piece of paper on the walls, your grandma's forehead, on dogs and cats. How much is this signature worth then? Nothing, right? Because you can find it anywhere and everywhere. So that's the thing. So, same thing when crops happen, like the price of corn, let's say, because it was scarce, there wasn't that much, the price for it went really high. So, a bunch of farmers started planting a bunch of corn. And because like every farmer around the world basically was making corn, the price of corn, instead of being like, let's say $100 for a barrel, excuse me, it would drop down to like 5 cents a barrel. Why? Because again, everybody's making it. Everyone's planting corn. So there's too much of it. No one's gonna buy a barrel of corn where you can get it somewhere else cheaper. You know why? Because people need to sell it. And the thing with crops is they don't last that long, do they? So people need to sell them quick before they rot. Okay. So, wheat, corn, cotton, potatoes, all that stuff. The U.S. farmers were actually hit the hardest. Okay. And you'll learn about this more next year. Same thing too with the international financial crisis, which event again involved the United States stock market. You'll learn about this more next year in U.S. history. But the thing is, um, this is mainly because of the Dawes plan, or sorry, Dawes plan, which we talked about last class. Okay, because remember, Americans were investing in Germany. They were putting money into Germany because they were trying to make a profit. The thing is, in the stock market in the US, people were making a lot of money, hand over fist. In Germany, they were making money, but it was only like a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there. Whereas in the US stock market, people were making tens, fifties, hundreds of dollars more. So people said, you know what? Forget Germany. I'm going to put my money in the stock market and really try to make my money grow. Now, here's the thing. A student tried to say in class, well, I would take it out right away. you know. But see, here's the thing: when you take your money out of the stock market, you get taxed on it, and if you put it back in and you take it out again, you're going to get taxed on it again. So you're losing money every time you take it out. So, and the thing is, too, you have to remember this: a lot of these brokers, people who knew what things are going on in the stock market, they follow that every day. That's their whole life. They're telling their investors, people who put the money in the stock market, they're telling them, leave it in, leave it in. Yeah, you have like $5 million right now, but you can get another 5 million if you leave it in the stock market, and it's just growing and growing. Here's the problem: it is growing, but nobody's asking why it's growing. And the reason why it's growing is because there's a bubble. And these are like legitimate things in stock market stuff, in legitimate, you know, situations here in the United States and in real life, that there is a bubble. Things people see as something and they think, oh my God, this stock market is so great, it's so big, I'm making tons of money. But just like any other bubble, once it gets to a certain capacity, it pops. And that's exactly what happened on October 1929. People lost millions of dollars. Basically, those stock people thought like, oh, this is worth $10,000, went from $10,000 to nothing in a matter of minutes, and to some of those lucky people, matter of days. You know, and the thing is, those people who are trying to sell their stock, they're trying to sell it, sell, 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 sell. Somebody buy this. Somebody buy this from me. Nobody wanted it because the price they wanted this price up here, but really it was worth like little to nothing. So it's like me trying to sell you an empty can of of like corn, you know. I mean, like, here, oh, buy this empty can of corn. Buy this for me for $10,000. You'd be looking at me like you're crazy, you know. That's the thing. Basically, those stocks that those people were trying to sell were worthless. Now, Europe was no stranger to economic depression. They've gone through so many. They even once almost had their economy collapse because of a flower. Yeah, it's called the tulip um, bubble. So if you check it on Google, I mean, look it up. Um, but the thing is, they've experienced this kind of stuff before. But the 1929 depression was unlike anything any of them have ever seen before. And that's why, still to this day, that is known as the Great Depression. Okay. 1 in 4 British people couldn't find a job. And when I mean couldn't find a job, it's not like, oh, well, I tried to get a job at this place, but, I'll just try somewhere else. No, like they wanted to get a job, but nobody was hiring because, again, no one's buying stuff because no one has money. So companies were firing people, and those who had jobs, who still managed to have a job, they were getting paid less, a lot less, you know. So yeah, things were getting bad. In Germany, 5.5 million people, about 30% of the country, couldn't get a job either. They're trying to find jobs and nobody's hiring. There's no jobs available. And some people lost their homes, they lost everything, and people were living out in the street, unemployed, starving. Pictures you see right there, people just sleeping on the road, on piers. Yeah, little kids digging through trash cans looking for some food to eat. Yeah, that happened. Because again, no money. So here's the thing: the governments at that time were like, you know what, we need to do something about this, and they panicked. They didn't really sit down and think, how can we get ourselves out of this? So what they did instead is they figured, oh, because companies aren't making money, that's why they're not hiring. So if we lower the wages of workers, meaning the workers get paid less, still working long hours, getting paid less now, then that will be good for the companies, and the companies will hire uh, more people. And on top of that, if we put a tax, a special tax on anything not made in our country, then people will buy stuff from our country, and then our country is going to be making money, and then our country will be stronger. Here's the problem: um, those workers are getting paid less. Now they really can't afford anything, and the taxes they put on other stuff from other countries, they never lowered the prices of the stuff from their country, so the price stays up here, and people are getting paid down here, so they can't pay for something up here. So you know this these governments just made things worse. So then comes a new political reform. People are like, okay, you, the government, don't know what you're doing. We need something different. Now, due to the lack of confidence in capitalism, which that's the type of economy most other countries had at that time, some countries are starting to look at the Marxist idea. That guy you see up on the top picture, that is Karl Marx. He is the father of communism. And he predicted that under capitalism, overproduction would happen and that the market would collapse, which ends up happening. Okay. Um, Now, since this happened, communism became a very popular idea for workers and intellectuals. Communism basically says that the government controls everything. Because you have to remember, a person who owns a company, people are greedy, you know. And if a person owns a company, they're going to think about, how can I make my money? How can I make the most money? Well, other companies don't. You know, they're always trying to leg up one another. And a businessman, if there's a dollar between you and him, he'll cut your throat for it. You know, but they're saying that a government, you know, they don't. It's not like one person running the government; it's a whole group of people, and that the government, they control everything, not the individuals, the government, the whole government. And from there, they will take care of everything because the government isn't, in a sense, greedy, like an individual is. And the government only works when the workers work. And they know in order to make a worker work, the worker needs to be taken care of. Okay. Now, again, like I said, sounds great on paper, but not really. The Great Depression made people follow political leaders who offered simple solutions in exchange for power. And this is a little gateway to how people like Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin become uh, the dictators that they are when we get to World War II. Okay, so keep that in the back of your head, okay? So as this is going on and people are hurting, countries are hurting around the world, democracy starts to dwindle around the world, and people start looking at capitalism like it's just all about greed. That's all it is. Whereas this other form of government, at least they care about the workers because the country is not going to function if the workers aren't taken care of. Now, here's another thing too. In most democratic countries, women still couldn't vote. In the United States, the women just barely got the right to vote by the time the stock market crashed. Women barely was able to vote for like 9 years when the stock market crashed. In France, it wouldn't be for another 10 years or so. Um, Italy, something like that too, like 11, 12 years. In Switzerland, it would be for another like 30 something years. Actually, more like 40 years till women got the right to vote. So, yeah, so some of these communist countries were saying, like, look at all these other places, women can't vote, whereas communism, yeah, women can vote. So Germany lost its imperial power. They couldn't control any other country. So then they became a republic, and then inflation made people's life savings worthless. It's like you see in that picture, that lady basically burned her money because, again, it was basically trash. It had no value. Okay. And that's one thing I would try to tell you guys in class was it doesn't matter if you have 10 quadrillion dollars. If the money is worthless, then you have nothing. The value of the dollar is the key thing. And if the dollar isn't worth anything, then you have nothing. You can have all the dollars in the world, but if there's nothing to back it up, no value to it, then there's no value to it. Okay. And because of this the Great Depression led to fear and rise of extremist political parties, especially in Germany. Okay. Now, France, believe it or not, of all the countries around the world, they were pretty darn strong. Okay, especially in Europe. Um, their economic balance didn't really take effect until 1932, so about a good 2 3 years after after the depression started. Then they started feeling some of the pushback. So communism, socialism, radical reforms started popping up, and France said, you know what, we're going to do this thing called the Popular Front. So the Popular Front started programs to help workers. It's called the French New Deal. They took this idea from the Americans because Americans had a president named FDR, and he came up with this plan called the New Deal. So France kind of piggybacked off that idea. Basically, what it did is gave workers the power to negotiate wages with the companies, and same thing with hours. They were like, we're working long hours. They're getting paid like crap. So now these workers, thanks to unions and things like that, could fight back and get decent hours and decent pay. So after a while, they started getting those 40 hours a week. And if they worked more than 40 hours, they got overtime. Okay. They would get paid vacation and a minimum wage. So that's like basically the country saying you you have to this is the barely the minimum. This is the lowest you can get paid for all your work every hour and stuff like that. Now in Britain, okay, after the war ended, their coal factories, steel factories, textile companies started to go in decline, and they had about 2 million people go out of work in 1921. Now this is before the Great Depression, so even before that, people were kind of hurting. Okay, and when the Great Depression did hit, it really hurt them because there was a group called the Labor Party, and since the Great Depression had been under their watch, and they didn't do really much to make things better, this new group called the Conservative Party basically stepped in and said, "You know what? We'll take over and we'll get this thing straightened out." And they're talking about having a balanced budget. They're like, we can't spend more than we're getting taken in, so we need to figure that out. And we need to get people to buy things from our country, so they put taxes on other places from around the world. All right, so that's the lesson for today. Now, again, if you haven't been following along some of that in the past couple weeks, there is no question at the end because that is now the exit ticket. You need to be in class to do the exit ticket. Okay, I do have a makeup assignment. If you missed more than two, okay, if you missed one or two, you can do a little simple word search. Okay, but if you miss more than two, you're going to do another assignment. Okay, you can't be doing 3, 4 word searches to make up for it. Okay, you can do one. That's about it. The rest of them have to be made up with the other assignment. Okay, so that's basically it for this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. With that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.